Two of the most famous German World War II planes were the Me-109 and the Me-110. These were gifted the nicknames the Messer and the Destroyer, or Zerstörer.
Zwei der berühmtesten Flugzeuge des Zweiten Weltkriegs waren die Me-109 und die Me-110. Diese erhielten die Spitznamen Messer und Destroyer oder Zerstörer.
Dawn, 1st September 1939. World War II is about to begin. Squadrons of the German Luftwaffe drone east towards the Polish border. The Luftwaffe by now, thanks to Hitler's secret rearmament program, has some 1,750 bombers and 1,200 fighters, including the formidable Messerschmitt Me-109 at its disposal. Facing this onslaught is a meager force of less than 200 obsolete Polish fighter aircraft. Even so, this little force, aided by a few antiquated anti-aircraft guns, would manage to down 170 Luftwaffe planes before being swept from the skies. A real tribute to the fighting spirit of the Poles. German aircraft overwhelmed the Poles after a few brief but intense aerial duels. The German Luftwaffe in the autumn of 1939 was a well-oiled machine. The backbone of the fighter force, the Me-109, had been flying since 1935, and the ensuing 4 years had provided plenty of time to work out problems with the aircraft. The 109 was the first true modern fighter of the era, boasting a mono-wing design with a closed canopy and retractable landing gear. It scored more kills than any fighter in history, and was military aviation's first true multitasking airship. It was an excellent air interceptor and ground attack platform with a tank-busting 30mm cannon. It was also an escort fighter and an efficient reconnaissance aircraft. The 109 was also produced in greater quantities than any other Axis aircraft of the war, and is the most produced fighter aircraft in history, with over 31,000 units rolling off Nazi production lines. There is a degree of confusion over the name of the 109 fighter, known both as the Bf-109 and the Me-109. Bf-109 was the original RLM, or German Air Ministry designation, when the design was sent in by the Bayerische Flugzeug Company. Because the company was renamed to Messerschmitt, some late-war aircraft actually carried the Me-109 designation stamped onto their aircraft type plates. Me-109 was the name used officially by the Luftwaffe propaganda publications, as well as by the Messerschmitt Company and the Luftwaffe personnel, who pronounced it May 109. Me-109 was the contemporary English interpretation of the designation. However, in both wartime and contemporary literature, both the BF and ME prefixes are used, and both are considered valid and accurate. In strategy sessions before the war, the Luftwaffe had concluded that unless bases were available in northern France or the Low Countries, attacks against the British mainland would be very difficult to mount, particularly for fighters with a mere 500-mile range. Poland had fallen in just 28 days. The Luftwaffe had yet to face an opponent capable of meeting it head-on. Only the RAF and the French Air Force had such a capability. But for nearly 8 months, there was little air-to-air combat, as the phony war was in full swing. Both sides used the winter to ready themselves for the coming conflict. The strategic situation changed dramatically in the late spring of 1940, when the Germans did precisely what they had done in World War I. Following the old von Schlieffen plan, they rolled right through the Low Countries and into the Ardennes in great numbers, bypassing entirely the supposedly invulnerable Maginot Line fixed fortifications. In just days, the Luftwaffe had its needed bases in northern France, just 20 minutes flying time to mainland England. The 109 was about to engage with history. As the battle joined in the summer of 1940, the 109 saw heavy action, especially over the Channel with aerial attacks on shipping and against defending Spitfires and Hurricanes. The 109 enjoyed a distinct edge over the British planes with its Daimler-Benz 601 fuel-injected engine. The Supermarine Spitfire was an awesome fighter aircraft, but its Merlin engine depended on gravity-fed carburation, as did the Hawker Hurricane. Both engines would cut out under negative G-forces inherent in aerial dogfighting. The Me-109s thus had the initial advantage in both diving to attack or to escape. Despite its disadvantages, the Spitfire proved a formidable opponent, being slightly faster and somewhat more maneuverable at medium to high speeds than the Me-109, which suffered from higher wing loading in its design. On the question of comparative turning circles in combat situations, the Spitfires and Hurricanes benefited from their lower wing loading compared with the 109. The wing load in the British planes were 22 to 24 pounds per square foot, as against 32 pounds for the 109. RAF tests with a captured Me-109 showed the Spitfire's turning circle, without height loss, was 696 feet, while the 109's was 885 feet to make the same turn. The Hurricane's turning circle would be slightly tighter. No Me-109 pilot wanted to turn with a Hurricane in a dogfight, but his ship enjoyed exceptional handling at near stalling speeds. The Hurricane had a unique advantage over both planes in its cloth fuselage and wing covering. The Me-109's cannon shells would often pass right through without exploding. Other firepower between the warring sides were comparable. with the Spitfire's 8.30 caliber machine guns versing the 109's two 7.92mm MG-17 machine guns and two 20mm MG forward-firing cannons. However, the forward-firing cannon occasionally jammed in combat, and it had a small magazine of a mere 60 rounds. To be fair, when the Spitfires were later upgraded and acquired two 20mm Hispano-Suiza cannons, they initially had serious jamming problems themselves. RAF pilots who tested captured 109s liked the engine and throttle response, but criticized the high-speed handling characteristics. Poorer turning circle, greater force required on the control column at speed, and the thick framing of the cockpit glazing, which they felt created blind spots in the pilot's field of vision. The ME-109 also suffered from ground accidents due to swing on takeoff and landings. It has been suggested that 5% of all 109s were lost this way. Former Czech RAF Spitfire pilots who were equipped with the ME-109G after World War II nicknamed the machine the Mule, indicating that the problem was never solved. In February of 1940, some months before the Battle of Britain began, the 109 was fitted with a newer engine, the Daimler-Benz DB601E. The 109 never made its mark as an escort fighter due to extremely limited range. It carried only 88 gallons of fuel, which, allowing for takeoff and flight time to the battlefield, meant they could only stay 15 minutes over British airspace before heading back across the Channel to their bases in France. When that happened, German bombers were on their own as they flew deeper into Britain to their targets. Any 109 pilot involved in a dogfight who forgot to turn and run for home was sure to ditch in the Channel and maybe never to be heard from again. But the 109 made an excellent air interceptor for defensive purposes over Germany. They played havoc with the 8th Air Force B-17s and B-24s, making daytime runs over targets in Germany. It was upgraded with a more aerodynamic fuselage and engine cowling. Later models of the 109, like the F, underwent improvements that made them more closely resemble a Spitfire. The earlier trapezoidal wings were traded in for more aerodynamically enhanced wings that were elliptical, like the Spitfires. The stabilizer struts were removed. The large underwing radiators were downsized. The opening for the supercharger was improved. The flaps were changed dramatically, and the wingspan was increased to 9.92 meters. The newly redesigned wing made the mounting of guns impractical, so the ship's armament was revised. The F model now boasted two MG-17 guns above the engine, plus a cannon firing through the propeller hub. The first ME-109 F planes were not well tested, and some planes crashed or nearly crashed due to vibrations which caused either the wing surface to curve or break, or caused the stabilizer to break away. Nevertheless, all these design problems were eventually solved, and the pilots came to agree that the 109 F series was the best handling of all. As the war dragged on with Hitler's decision to open up the second front with Russia, the Third Reich was hard put to answer all the production needs it had. The Luftwaffe had been converting to the ME-109 F series as quickly as possible. They were forced to invade Russian airspace with the original 109E. While dated by Luftwaffe standards by then, the 109E was more than enough to outmatch most of the defending aircraft it would meet. Early on the 22nd of June 1941, the Luftwaffe launched a preemptive strike with 637 bombers and 231 fighters on 31 airfields. Surprise was complete. Hundreds of Russian aircraft were destroyed. Just 2 German aircraft were lost. The attacks continued all day, and by nightfall, almost 300 Russian aircraft had been downed by the 109E fighters, and at least 800 more destroyed on the ground. By the 29th of June, a week later, the Nazis reported the destruction of at least 4,017 Soviet aircraft to the loss of 150. As production of the 109F increased and battlefield attrition took its toll of the 109Es, by the fall of 1941, the Es all but disappeared from frontline units. Messerschmitt's Me-109, the backbone of the Luftwaffe fighter squadrons, reached its pinnacle with the production of the F-series, and as the Luftwaffe began taking delivery of the Fritz, no successor to the Messerschmitt progeny was on the drawing board. Even so, by mid-campaign on the Eastern Front, as the 3-pronged Nazi invasion force rolled over the opposition, the Messerschmitt design team produced yet another of the now aging 109. This one was called the Me-109G, or Gustav, as it affectionately was known among the troops. The G6 model, ultimately the most produced Bf-109 version, had extremely heavy armament. The G6 U4 variant with Ruhstadt's R6 was armed with 2 13mm MG-131s mounted in the engine cowling, a 30mm Mark 108 cannon firing through the propeller hub, and 1 20mm MG-151-20 cannon in each wing. The G6 also came with various assembly sets, and used to carry bombs or a drop tank for use as a night fighter, or to increase firepower with the addition of rockets or extra machine guns. It was in an Me-109 G14 that Major Erich Hartmann of the Luftwaffe reached his unrivaled total of 352 confirmed victories, although these were gained on the Eastern Front, where German fighters easily outclassed the early Soviet fighters. The 109G remained the major version right up to the end of hostilities in May 1945. It is thought that some 35,000 Bf-109s of all versions were produced. By the late summer of 1944, the Luftwaffe fighter arm had been rendered impotent through heavy attrition, as the 109s encountered the vastly superior P-51D Mustangs of the Allies. Now, lacking experienced pilots and constantly feeling the pinch of dwindling fuel supplies, units could occasionally inflict heavy casualties on the Allies, but could not influence the war. The U.S. Army's 8th Air Force B-17s and B-24s by day, and British Lancasters by night, were beginning to severely impact the production of war material. General Adolf Galland was assigned by Göring to deal with them. It was felt that if he could put up 1,500 to 2,000 fighters against the bombers, the raids could be stopped in their tracks and give the Reich some breathing room. As the fall wore on and the Luftwaffe gathered strength for the big show, Galland was stunned to receive orders canceling his operation and ordering his fighters held for a more pressing gamble. This was the December-winter attack through the Ardennes that became known as the Battle of the Bulge. The plan was for Galland's fighters to make a tactical attack on the many Allied airfields of the 2nd, 9th, and 19th Tactical Air Forces. The Wehrmacht staff felt that if total surprise could be achieved and 1,000 or more Allied fighters could be destroyed on the ground, there would be nothing the Allies could do to stop the Panzer spearheads, who would then drive through to the coast and split the Allied forces in two. Galland's very logical argument against the plan fell on deaf ears. He and others knew it was too desperate a gamble, and that the Allies could easily replace their losses, and that Germany could not. But the Führer had made his decision, and there was no stopping him. As the bad weather finally lifted, Operation Bodenplatte, as it was called, was finally launched on the 1st of January, 1945. The Luftwaffe was about to set off on its last great mission of the war. At first light, hundreds of Luftwaffe planes were sent off on their secret mission to destroy or cripple as many Allied planes and airfields as they could. The Luftwaffe had the benefit of surprise, but soon the Allies pulled themselves together and fought back. Still, the Germans had some success, but it was short-lived. The intense secrecy surrounding the operation extended to the German flak units, who presumed that the large formations of aircraft were hostile and sent up barrages that destroyed many of their own planes. The low state of German Luftwaffe training showed up when repeated strafing runs over Allied airfields resulted in fewer than a dozen Allied losses per field. Conversely, Allied training was in evidence as hundreds of American and British fighters managed to get into the air and carry the fight to the attacking Luftwaffe, downing more than 100 of the 109s. Allied fighters were relentless and chased the 109s back to their bases and inflicted more losses on the Germans along the way. Galland's fighter force was decimated. Operation Bodenplatte had unfolded exactly as Galland had feared it would. The Luftwaffe raid had destroyed less than 200 Allied planes, all of which were replaced within a few days. The last major operation of the Bf-109 had produced little effect on the war and had further seriously weakened the Luftwaffe. The cost of destroying a relatively few Allied aircraft was devastating for the Luftwaffe. The Allies could replace their aircraft easily. Germany could not. By the spring of 1945, the Luftwaffe Me-109s as an organized force was spent. Wreckage of the downed aircraft littered the landscape. The metal of the machines fused with the bodies of dead pilots, forming sad monuments to a lost cause. These men knew the Third Reich was finished. They fought on, not for Hitler or the Nazis, but for their own sense of airman's pride. It was a quality that even their enemies could appreciate. The Me-109, even in defeat, had proven that it was as tough as the men who had flown her. The Bf-110 and its variants, the 210 and 410, has its origins with a desire by Luftwaffe Chief Hermann Göring in 1934 to develop a strategic fighter called the Kampfverstor, or battle destroyer. It would ultimately prove to be a formidable aircraft design. At the beginning, however, the Messerschmitt Bf-110 had very mixed fortunes. It has often been criticized for its failure during the Battle of Britain, while its successes in other fields have been largely ignored. Yet this aircraft, that did not match up to Luftwaffe expectations, managed to serve Germany throughout the Second World War in long-range escort fighter, fighter-bomber, reconnaissance, ground attack, and night fighter roles. The long-range multi-seat escort fighter is possibly the most difficult of combat aircraft to design. Such a machine as was required by Marshal Göring to equip the elite Zerstörer formations that he envisaged had to be capable of penetrating deep into enemy territory, possessing sufficient range to accompany bomber formations. The fuel tank capacity necessary presented a serious weight penalty, and called for the use of 2 engines if the Zerstörer was to achieve a performance approaching that of the single-seat fighter Interceptor it was certain to oppose. Still, the 110 had the potential of becoming an exceptional addition to the Luftwaffe's fleet, if its initial design problems could be overcome. Having a fighter of sheer bulk, however, was not necessarily enough for it to be able to easily defeat an enemy fighter. It also had to be blessed with extraordinary maneuverability if it was to successfully oppose a Spitfire or a Hurricane. Messerschmitt himself possessed no previous experience with twin-engine military aircraft when he commenced work on the Bf-110. His first warplane, the superb single-seater Bf-109, had been conceived the previous summer. At the time, the most powerful aero engine of national design available was the Junkers Umo 210A of 610 horsepower. It was obvious from the outset that even a pair of these would be inadequate to provide the necessary power such a large and heavy machine would need. Messerschmitt designers had started working on an upgrade of the Bf-110 in 1937, before the production version of the 110 had ever flown. In late 1938, the 110 was just entering service, and the RLM started looking ahead for its eventual replacement. Messerschmitt sent in the modified 110 design as the Me-210. It was a straightforward cleanup of the 110 and used many of the same parts. The main differences were a single-tail configuration, a modified nose area that was much shorter and located over the center of gravity. It also had an all-new wing design for higher cruise speeds. On paper, the 210's performance was impressive. It could reach 385 miles per hour on two 601F engines, making it about 50 miles per hour faster than the Bf-110, and nearly as fast as single-engine fighters of the era. The Bf-110 carried its ordnance externally, on the wings and fuselage. but this created drag. The Me-210 avoided this problem by housing the bombs in an enclosed bay in the nose of the aircraft. The Me-210 could carry up to 2,200 pounds of bombs. The aircraft had dive brakes fitted on the tops of the wings and a Stuvie 5B bomb sight in the nose for shallow dive bombing. In the fighter role, the bomb bay was fitted with 4 20mm cannon. For defense, the Me-210's rear gunner was armed with 2 MG-131 machine guns. These were fitted into the half-teardrop-shaped turrets mounted on each side of the airplane and were remote-controlled from the gunner's position. The rear cockpit canopy was bulged out to allow the gunner to aim down and to the rear. The guns were electrically fired, and electrical contact breakers prevented the gunner from shooting off the 21's tailplane. An order for 1,000 Me-210s was placed even before the prototype had flown. In time, this would prove to be a mistake. The first prototype flew with DB601 engines in September 1939 and was considered unsafe by test pilots. Stability was bad in turns, and it tended to snake even while flying level. At first, the designers concentrated on the twin rudder arrangement that had been taken from the 110 and replaced it with the new and much larger single-tail vertical stabilizer. However, this had almost no effect, and the plane continued to oscillate. The Me-210 also suffered from terrible stalls with the nose up or in a turn. The stalls whipped into spins when the automatic leading edge slates opened. An Me-210 was lost in September 1940 when the pilot could not get out of the resulting spin and had to jump. The chief test pilot commented that the Me-210 had all the least desirable attributes an airplane could possess. It took 16 prototypes and 94 pre-production examples to try and resolve the many problems. Nevertheless, the RLM was desperate to replace the Bf-110s currently in service and ordered full production in the spring of 1941. Plans to introduce the Me-210 had been underway since 1939, but the aircraft proved to be extremely unstable and was never considered useful enough to enter production. Nevertheless, the Hungarians made a number of minor modifications to the layout to produce the Me-210C, which proved to be superior to the German versions. So superior, in fact, that there was some talk of introducing a new Me-210D version for production in Germany, otherwise identical to the Hungarian 210Cs. As studies progressed on the 210D, it was instead decided to introduce a new model, the Me-410. The major change between the 210 and the 410 was the introduction of the larger and more powerful Daimler-Benz 603A engines, which improved power from the earlier DB605s. The engine performance increased the 410's maximum speed to 388 miles per hour, greatly improved climb rates, service ceiling, and, most notably, the cruise speed, which jumped to 360 miles per hour. It also improved payload capacity to the point where the aircraft could lift more ordnance than it could fit into the bomb bay under the nose. To address this, shackles were added under the wings for 4 110-pound bombs. These changes added a total of 15,000 pounds to the ME-210 design, but the extra engine power more than made up for this difference. The 410 was the plane that the 210 should have been. Deliveries began in mid-1943, more than 2 years later than the original plan had called for. When it arrived, it was liked by its crews, even though its improved performance was not enough to protect it from swarms of high-performance Allied aircraft. Its arrival came at a crucial time for the Luftwaffe. Allied bombing raids were getting more intense. The RAF heavy bomber fleet was now laying waste with large attacks on the Third Reich's cities. It was beginning to be a very grim time for Germans on the home front. The 410 was only moderately successful as a bomber-destroyer attacking unescorted enemy aircraft. A considerable number of kills against American day bomber formations were amassed. Unfortunately for the Luftwaffe, the Me-410 was no match in a dogfight with lighter single-engine fighters, such as the P-51 Mustang or the P-47 Thunderbolt. In early 1944, Me-410 units were frequently mauled by the swarms of Allied fighters protecting the bomber streams. For example, on the 13th of May 1944, one unit was jumped by 20 P-51s and 12 Me-410s were lost. From the summer of 1944, the destroyers were taken from frontline duties and production was phased out in favor of single-engine fighters, with the 410s remaining in service on reconnaissance duties only. The basic A-series planes were armed with two 7.92mm MG-17 and two 20mm MG-151 20 guns in the nose, and delivered as the Me-410A, a light bomber. The originally planned heavy fighter Me-410A-2 was cancelled because the dual Mk-103 cannon pack was not ready in time. The Me-410A featured a bomb bay for carrying air-to-ground ordnance or for the installation of additional air-to-air weapons or other equipment. Initially, 3 conversion kits were available. The U-1 contained a pallet of cameras for the photo reconnaissance role. U-2 had two 20mm MG-151 20 guns with 250 rounds each for heavy fighter use, and U-4 used the 50mm BK-5 cannon with 21 rounds to turn the aircraft into a dedicated bomber-destroyer. The BK-5 cannon, derived from a now outdated anti-tank weapon, allowed the 410s to shoot at their targets from over 1,000 yards, a distance at which the bomber's guns were useless for defense. The low rate of fire and limited ammunition supply, together with the extra weight of the large gun, made the other anti-bomber versions of the 410 much more useful. The dedicated reconnaissance version Me-410A3 received a deeper fuselage for additional cameras and fuel. The 410A3 entered service in small numbers in early 1944 and equipped 3 long-range recon units, one on the Western Front and the other 2 on the Eastern Front. The Me-410B series was largely the same as the A series, but replaced the 7.92mm MG-17 guns with 13mm MG-131 guns. The originally planned 1,900 horsepower DB603G engine was canceled in early 1944, so all 410s used DB603A or DB603AA engines, just like the A series. The DB603G would have increased the maximum speed to 392 miles per hour and cruising speed to 370 miles per hour, although the weights increased once again. The versions were the same as the A versions, the 410, B1, B2, and B3 models filling the same roles as the earlier A1, A2, and A3 versions. Several experimental models were also developed. The Me-410B5 added shackles under the fuselage to carry a torpedo and removed the MG-131s in the nose to make room for the FUG ship search radar. The bomb bay was not used in this version in order to make room for a 650-liter fuel tank, and the defensive gun barbettes were replaced by another 700-liter fuel tank for long-range missions. The 410B6 was a similar anti-shipping conversion, but intended for the short-range coastal role only. For this mission, it did not use a torpedo and was instead a simple modification of the B1 with the FUG-200 radar. The Me-410B7 and B8s were updated B3 reconnaissance models that were only built as prototypes. The Me-410C was a high-altitude version drawn up in early 1944, with 2 new wing designs that increased the span to 67 feet. The larger wings allowed the gear to retract directly into the rear. A new universal engine mount would allow for the use of any of the DB603JZ or BMW 801J turbocharged engines, or the UMO 213E 2-stage mechanically supercharged engines, driving a new 4-bladed propeller with very wide blades. The 801 was air-cooled, and the 213 used an annular radiator in the nose, so the normal underwing radiators were removed, and the DB-powered versions would use the radiator from the 213s. None were ever built, as the Me-410 production was canceled before the engines matured. The Me-410D was a simpler upgrade to the B series to improve altitude performance, but not to the same degree as the C series. It would be powered by the DB603JZ engines, and had a revised forward fuselage to increase the field of view of the pilot and reduce drag. It also replaced portions of the outer wing panels with ones made of wood to conserve strategic materials. Several were built, but like many other attempts at wood construction, the loss of the Tego film factory in a bombing raid meant the adhesives available were not strong enough, and the wooden portions failed. Production was eventually canceled to concentrate on Messerschmitt Bf-109Gs in August 1944 after 1,160 Me-410s were built. In spite of its difficulties, the Me-110 and its derivatives did contribute to the German war effort. On the 11th of January 1944, 650 heavy bombers were sent deep into Germany to attack the aircraft factories in the Braunschweig area. The massed fighters of the Zerstörer-Gruppen poured their rockets into the tightly packed groups, breaking up the bombers' protective formations, and then joined the Bf-109s in attacking individual aircraft. 41 bombers were lost that day. On the 16th of March, 43 planes of the ZG-76 caught the heavies without fighter escort and knocked down 18 B-17s. After their third pass, however, the bomber escort arrived and dived to the attack. During the ensuing battle, 60% of the Zerstörer were shot down. From time to time, the night fighters were also used on day operations. They were first employed as the close escort to the Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau off the Dutch coast. And in the summer of 1943, they fought American day bomber formations whenever the latter flew unescorted. The German fighter groups sustained heavy losses during these actions owing to their pilots, trained in night fighting tactics, going in too close before attacking and suffering withering fire from the bombers. The Bf-110 in particular was also no match even for the heavy P-47 Thunderbolts, which were often used in an escort role. Shortly after these events, while the 410s continued to fly, the Zerstörer-Gruppen traded their 110s for Bf-109Gs. Thus ended the checkered career of one of the most enigmatic fighters of World War II.